Garen and Katarina, the two champions I started this channel with. 500 plus subscribers later, and some of the most viewed videos on my channel are talking about fictional relationships. ZX Syndra, is it possible? Yasuo X Riven, is it possible? Ezreal X Lux, is it possible? But I never really started my channel analyzing relationships. It was really just a poorly edited and drawn out video trying to apply psychology in a fun way. So I think it's only fair if we go back and give this couple a proper analysis to truly determine if Katarina x Garen is possible. With the return of your favorite host. We're going back to give this couple another look under the love microscope that is psychology. The first time we simply analyzed how Garen would feel at the thought of liking Katarina, but this time we'll be analyzing both of these characters. We're gonna be looking at their motivations for doing what they do, how those were developed, and how these motivations would influence them when it's time to finally meet. So let's get started. If you have learned anything from the last ship video, I hope it was that our relationship with our parents has a heavy influence on how we relate with anyone, platonically and romantically. So to figure out what motivates Katarina as a person in this world, we'll have to look at the barely functioning relationship she has had with her father, General Duco Tao, one of Noxus's most powerful and respected assassins. Since childhood, if you could even call it that, Katarina has been training to be the ultimate killing machine under the guidance of her father, a general who was known for being a harsh teacher and difficult to impress. Of course, you couldn't expect him to be any different with his own daughter, and it's this dynamic that gives us a glimpse of what motivates Katarina. You see, Katarina was conditioned to associate strength with her father's approval, recognition? Love? Maybe? I'm not sure what to call it, but it was enough to influence and motivate Katarina's behavior. Conditioning is a term you'll often see used in psychology. It refers to our ability to be trained to behave in a certain way under certain circumstances. The way we are trained is by pairing within our heads a behavior to something else. Let's say you go to the gym, get a good workout in, trying to get jacked for your favorite waifu or something, I don't know. After the gym, you decide to treat yourself to some ice cream, a frozen treat that I'll just assume you enjoy. Now let's say you get the ice cream after every workout. Eventually, you'll pair the pleasurable experience of the ice cream with the behavior of going to the gym. So whenever you think of going to the gym, you'll think of that behavior as something positive, simply because you've associated it with a pleasurable reward, the ice cream. This is what I mean when I say she associated strength with her father's recognition. She paired the two ideas in her head. Now that's a really simplified explanation of just one form of conditioning. But the point is that conditioning is how we shape our behavior. It's how we learn what's accepted and what isn't. It's how we learn what to value. And it's how Duco Tao trained his daughter. She knew strength got daddy's attention, and to a child that doesn't understand the concept of unconditional love, that is one hell of a reward. Why else would she go outside of her regular training to do things like scale tall buildings at night, or inject small doses of poison into her body to test their effects and build up a resistance? Homegirl, I'm pretty sure that shit wasn't required for your daily regimen. Clearly, Katarina isn't just doing as she's told. She is motivated to push herself further, and at the core of this behavior is her father's approval, which ultimately led to Katarina making possibly the biggest mistake of her life. Katarina's first mark as an assassin for Noxus came straight from her father. This was the moment Katarina had been training all her life for, but her mark was nothing more than a low-born line officer named Demetrius. An unworthy target of her skill, she thought, so she killed the enemy commander of the same camp instead. which she expected to bring glory to her father and Noxus, brought in ambush by Demetrius on her father's encampment. Dozens of Noxians paid for Katarina's mistake with their lives. Her father barely made it out with his. And boy was he furious, refusing to even look at Katarina as he scolded her. Oh, and he ordered her death as well. But that rejection, my guy! Katarina knew from then on that the shame she brought to him and her family lost her his favor. And might I add, he's a pretty petty guy, going out of his way to raise others the same way afterwards, just to spite her. Now that's pretty fucked up, man. I can't imagine how overwhelmed Katarina must have felt. She isn't an all-around evil person. She's violent as hell, don't get me wrong, but she genuinely felt remorseful for the people that died because of her. And on top of this grief, Katarina lost the source of all her motivation. Ironically enough, Duko Tao has no one other than himself to blame for his daughter's arrogance. He taught her that his attention, recognition, approval, love, etc. is entirely conditional. Katarina's understanding of her relationship with her father is that strength equals attention. Therefore, what limit do you expect Katarina to understand? If strength and accomplishments are what defines her as a human being, then of course she will always be seeking the greatest of opportunities to prove herself. She has no other means of assuring her father's approval. She was taught that her father's love is conditional. Now disgraced and disowned, what is our red-haired sinister blade to do? What she does best: kill. Being an assassin is all that she understands, but thanks to the additional lore, we see that she has a new driving motivation after her father's rejection. Sometime after her disgrace, we find our favorite redhead surrounded after assassinating her target in front of a horde of enemies. A distant memory of her father's teachings resurfaces. Never take your mark head on. Never kill in the presence of witnesses. To which she responds,
I don't know if my voice can go deep enough for Katarina, but an attempt will be made.
I am no longer your assassin, father. I have outgrown your timid little rules. Let them see. Let the rumors spread. I am far more than a mere instrument of death.
With her father no longer being the source of her approval, she turns to the rest of the world, rejecting her father's teachings of subtlety, and instead letting the world recognize her strength. I'd say Katarina is now primarily motivated to fill that empty void her father's rejection left behind. It makes sense because strength is what defines Katarina, but how can she be assured of herself if her father is no longer there to confirm that strength? To confirm her worth as a human? By letting the world give her the recognition she needs. Someone is gonna witness and tell her tale. Being raised to value strength, she'll likely respond to that when she finally encounters our golden boy Garen. But would there be any opportunity for a romance to develop? Garen Crownguard has a similar upbringing to Katarina in that he too embraced a destiny that was handed down to him by his family. However, I do not see any real issues with his relationship to his parents. Everything seems standard in that department. If you need more details, y'all can just watch my Ezreal and Lux video. They got the same parents after all. But a lot of the information that we went over the first time we analyzed Garen carries over to today's analysis. Any internal conflict Garen would find at the mere notion of feelings for Katarina would stem from his role in the society that raised him. You see, while Katarina is motivated by the f***ed-up relationship she had with her father, Garen is motivated by the f***ed-up relationship he has with his society. Demacia doesn't have the best relationship with magic. It demonizes the practice and teaches its citizens to fear it at a young age. Garen was not only taught about these dangers from his society, but also his uncle, a ranger who would frequently tell Garen about the dangers he experienced beyond the nation's walls. We know that Garen's uncle was someone important to him, because it was his death at the hands of mages that eventually pushed him to dedicate himself to protecting the throne, through serving in the Demacian military. Garen rose through the ranks quickly, already being a seasoned warrior by the age of 18, and eventually joining the Dauntless Vanguard, the elite of the elite of the elite. Our boy holds quite the impressive track record. But for as impressive as his history may be, Garen is as simple as his in-game kit, and it's this simplicity that makes him problematic. Garen is extremely blunt and straightforward when it comes to handling situations. And by simple, I mean as long as someone violates Demasia's code, he will exact justice, no matter the circumstances. And this is no better exemplified than when both him and Lux encounter a strange situation in a town far from the Demasian heartland. A person was accused of murdering his family and stood before an angry mob of townfolks awaiting an execution. He pleaded that he had no other choice, that they were actually monsters whose real faces were made of literal darkness. Lux listened to the man's plea, already understanding that there was dark magic at work in this town. But Garen readied his sword. His reasoning? He is a monster. Even if he is not a servant of evil, he is a murderer. There can be only one punishment. With a swift blow, Garen cleaved the man's head from his body. Garen is not the type to consider situational circumstances when it comes to upholding Demasia's code of law, especially when magic is involved, since he absolutely despises it. And it makes sense for him to develop this way of thinking because of the role he has in his society. As a paragon of Demacia, Garen has a set of expectations he must meet, the most common being delivering justice. He does not have the time to consider the complexity of circumstances that can cause a person to be in whatever situation that they are. The means do justify the end to this man, much less if magic is involved. This ideology is on full display after the demons were eliminated from the town I previously mentioned. Lux mentions that the people were too quick to rush to judgment about the man Garen executed, not allowing for any chance for understanding, which led to this exchange. They don't want understanding. They don't need it.
How can you say that?
We live in a world that does not allow for such nuances, Lux. Demacia is beset on all sides by terrible foes, savage tribes in the north, a rapacious empire in the east, and the power of dark mages who threaten the very fabric of our realm. We deal in absolutes by necessity. Allowing doubt to cloud our judgment leaves us vulnerable, and I cannot allow us to become vulnerable.
Even at such a cost?
Even so, it's why I do what I do.
For Demacia?
For Demacia. Garen understands that the society he lives in is one built on fear of the world beyond its walls. He understands that the dangers Demacia faces requires swift judgment. Allowing for what Garen calls doubt to set in when handling situations leaves Demacia vulnerable, and as a man in the front lines, it also leaves him vulnerable. Therefore, Garen does not hesitate to make quick decisions, and the only way to do so is to follow Demacia's laws down to the last letter. It's easier for him to think this way because when you limit your field of view, you require less mental energy to process a situation, which means you take less time to think. Thus, you make a quick decision without being clouded by doubt. What's problematic is that the doubt can sometimes actually be justified. My dude, you saw the literal demons that were plaguing the town, and yet you have no doubts about your decision to kill the man? This is why Garen says they don't need understanding. It is too time-consuming in a world that requires swift judgment for the protection of Demacia. The only time where we see Garen have any internal conflict over his decision is with regards to his sister Lux. He knows she practices magic, but Garen chooses to deny the possibility of such a thing because he's scared about what he would have to do if he ever accepted that reality. This is a family member he has shared numerous meaningful experiences with, and has known since as far back as he can remember, so it makes sense for Garen to show inner turmoil over the thought of his sister. But for a Noxian assassin he has no real emotional connection to? I think y'all know where I'm going with this. I don't believe Garen and Katarina is a possible ship within the League of Legends universe. I know! I sense your disappointment. I am too. I am the shipping Nimbus. I'm all about hoping fictional characters can find love. But even I have to admit that the evidence points to it being highly unlikely. Garen and Katarina are definitely bound to eventually meet on the battlefield. The both of them are from warring nations after all. But due to their motivations as people, I believe it is highly unlikely that they will have the opportunity to establish any sort of romantic relationship. Katarina is motivated to gain recognition for her skills on the battlefield. She would most likely see Garen as nothing more than an opportunity to send a message that even the mightiest warrior in Demacia is no match for the disgraced assassin. Meanwhile, Garen has developed a way of thinking that prohibits any understanding, and that includes for himself. It is not only advantageous on the battlefield for him to live by a code with no exception, but it also protects himself from any internal conflict. You can't have an emotional crisis if you don't allow yourself the opportunity to even consider emotions. We see this conflict with his thoughts over his sister, but even there he puts the idea of Lux using magic out of his mind. Again, not allowing himself the opportunity to process emotions, to process what type of impact that fact has on him. So we have one person who sees enemies as an opportunity to gain the recognition that she lost from her father, and another person whose role in society forces him to not allow anything that goes against Demacia's laws to even enter his mind. If these two ever meet, Katarina would be excited at the opportunity to kill one of Demacia's strongest warriors, while Garen would be compelled to fight to protect Demacia. Any thoughts about Katarina being remotely attractive would be forcibly pushed out of his conscious awareness. Allowing himself to process these emotions will leave him vulnerable during literal life or death moments. Vulnerability that Katarina, as an assassin trained by the best Noxus has to offer, would exploit to her advantage. Maybe then, she would finally be redeemed by the person she idolized. But I mean, you know, both of them are really powerful, so maybe every time they fight, it'll be a draw, and during that draw, they'll have time to look at each other and... or some shit, I don't know. Thank you all for watching, and if you don't hate me for concluding that Garen and Katarina is not possible, then please consider subscribing. We got all kinds of stuff on this channel. More psychological analysis of champions, analysis of entire game genres, even react videos. The cancer of YouTube. Nah, but I actually try to put effort even into those videos. So please, drop a subscribble and maybe hit that like button. And as always, my people, thank you for watching.